Hi guys, today in the workshop we have a Nissan Qashqai that's failed its MOT. It's failed on a bunch of different things, but today we're just going to be getting a head start on some of the issues with the suspension, ready for next week. So one of the things that this failed on was excessive play in the bottom ball joint, and one way that we can test for that is if you put your hands at 9 and 3 on the wheel and just give it a little shake. So now that we know that we've got excessive play in that bottom ball joint, let's take the wheel off and have a closer look. So with the wheel off, we can clearly see 3 issues on the bottom suspension arm. So we know we've got play in the bottom ball joint, but if we look at this back bush, look in a little bit closer, you can see it's cracking and it's separated from this casing. So that's just going to get worse and can cause a lot of play or even a knocking noise when you drive. And if we come in from the other side, we can see the other bush. But you can see the same thing is happening. The rubber is starting to fail and starting to come out of the housing. So to get this arm off, first of all, I would just disconnect the bottom ball joint. You need to separate that from the hub first because that's the most awkward one. And it's good to do that while you still have leverage with the 2 rear bushes connected. So what you want to do is first of all, grab a wire brush, give the threads a good clean. Once the threads are clean, using an 18mm socket, you should be able to gun off the nut, but the bolt that goes through the bottom ball joint might spin, so use a spanner to hold on the other side. So with us, our bolt didn't spin, so it means that that is seized in the bottom part of this hub. So what we want to do before we tap anything is that we want to make sure that that bolt can spin freely. So using a ratchet with again an 18mm socket, you just want to make sure that it can spin. So I'm just going to put the original nut back onto the other side. Not all the way down, but you want it down far enough so when you do tap it, it's not going to damage the bolt or any of the threads. So while turning one side with a ratchet, just to make sure that it's not going to catch anywhere, you can either apply constant pressure or just give it a few light taps. There you go. So with the bolt removed, you should be able to see the hole and it goes all the way through. That's because there's a little cutout in the top end of this bottom ball joint that when it sits complete in the hub, it allows the bolt to go through, and then that's what locks it in place. So in order to remove the bottom ball joint or separate it from the hub, we're going to use a special tool. So this hooks over onto the bottom arm and you can apply enough pressure, hopefully, to release that bottom ball joint. Some are easier than others, so let's give it a go. So with this hooked under, you should be able to apply pressure here. Should be able to apply pressure here downwards, and it should pull that out of the assembly where it can seize and go quite tight. You might need to tap this as well with a hammer if you're able to, or get a friend to help you, and then that should shock it enough in order to free it up. Otherwise, we can use a different set of tools in order to separate it. We can use this other set because they tend to damage the dust covers, but because we're going to be replacing the bottom arm, including the bottom ball joint, it doesn't really matter if we damage that dust cover. So if you're not planning on reusing the same bottom ball joint when you take it off, you can always use one of these tools. So they will fit in just around the bottom ball joint. Give it a tap in, and they will wedge between the bottom ball joint and the actual hub, forcing it to separate. So now that that's free, we can turn our attention to this rear bolt. Again, we're going to need a spanner on the top and a socket underneath. We should be able to gun it out, and then we'll move on to them. So here's the bolt that travels through the subframe, through that rear bush, and then there's a little nut on the top. The top nut is not a 17, it is an 18mm spanner. So we'll have that on there to hold there. And the bottom is a 16mm, so we'll just gun this. remove that top nut. Just help gently guide the bolt out. And now it's just the front two bolts. So these two are 21s. So it's awkward to get the gun in here, so we'll give it a go with a 1/2 inch ratchet. It's better that you tackle this with a ratchet anyway, just so that you can feel the threads to make sure that they're not going to strip inside, especially this kind of subframe where it's corroded. So what I've got to get the inner one is a 21mm swan neck spanner, just so I can get a little bit more clearance on the bolt. Now that's coming off nicely, but I've got to basically just help it off bit by bit until it's all the way out. There's that one. There's that one. So with everything loose, just want to slowly swing it out this way. That back bush is still in there. So it swings over. And I should just wiggle out. Now it's separate. So there you have it, guys. That's how you remove a passenger side front lower wishbone arm on a Nissan Qashqai 2. This one is a 2011 plate. Yeah, so by far the most awkward part is just the bottom ball joint itself. If they'd sent me the correct one, I would show you how to reassemble, but when you've taken it off, you'll get a feel for where everything needs to go. It's in the reverse order of everything that came apart. So it's the back bush placed in first, then you can swing it in, just try and catch these back two bolts, and then line up the bottom ball joint. One thing I would suggest though is when you're done with the reassembly is that we would advise that it goes for tracking. You want to make sure that all of the suspension that's just been disturbed is all sat in the right place. Last thing you want is for uneven wear to happen to your tyres. So I hope this has helped, guys. If it has, please leave a like, share, comment and all that. And if you have any questions about the reassembly, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to make a video on that. Cheers.